Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki, Gaur Vrinande. Jayam Vishnu Pat Parahamsa Parivrajikacharya Astatara Shata Shishi Mad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki, Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Kiri Govardhan ki, Shri Vrindavan Dham ki, Shri Mayapur Dham ki, Ganga Mai ki, Yamuna Mai ki, Bhakti Devi ki, Tulasi Devi ki, Transcendental Harinam Sankirtan Yagya ki, Transcendental Book Distribution ki, Gaur Premanande. Oh, glories to the simple devotees. Oh, glories to the simple devotees. Oh, glories to the simple devotees. Oh, glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Oh, glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhana Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhyaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Guru Nipcharni Nirishya Shishanyavadi Paschatya Dishatarni. Chaitanya Charanam Bhoja Makaranda Liho Bhaje Yesham Prasada Matrena Paramo Pyamaro Bhavet. Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yat Kripatam Aham Vande Paramananda Madhavam. Hare Krishna. So we are reading today from Transcendental Diaries, Volume 1 by Harishori Prabhu. And it's such a nice opportunity to glorify Srila Prabhupada on the anniversary day that he came to preach in the West. So thank you for that opportunity. So here we are, we're in November 1975. And Srila Prabhupada, he's in New Delhi, and he's giving a class, and Harishori Prabhu writes that there was a very small crowd who had gathered to hear from Srila Prabhupada, but he makes a point that whether speaking to one man or 10,000, Prabhupada's speech was earnest and grave. He applied himself fully to the great task. And in 1972 in Sydney, the devotees organized a program for Srila Prabhupada, and almost nobody came. But Prabhupada, again, every single time this happened, he just applied himself fully to giving class with all enthusiasm, even if only one or two people were there. And, at the end of that class, he said, no, there were a lot of people who came. Didn't you see Narada Muni was there, Lord Brahma was there? So even though we don't have the vision, the demigods came to see Srila Prabhupada speak. So there was always a full crowd for Srila Prabhupada, hearing from him. And Srila Prabhupada in the class, he explains that our real problem is this body, that we've become mad after sense gratification. Mata means mad. And when the prefix pra is added, it means sufficiently mad. So not only are we mad, but we're sufficiently mad. We're so mad that we're engaging in sinful activities. So that's how mad we are. He's just pointing out that in the material world, this is what's going on. And then he says that the knowledge to free oneself from this madness depends upon which authority one accepts. So we all will have to accept an authority. And we've chosen to accept our authority, Srila Prabhupada and his disciples in our Guru Parampara. But there are people in the world who have accepted science as their authority, or newspapers, or news on the television. That's their authority. Yes. But Srila Prabhupada points out that material science is just speculation. So the scientists, they'll say, we think it's like this, and we'll prove it to you someday. But Shastric knowledge, it's something practical, authoritative, and it's accepted by all great thinkers and saintly persons. It's actually real science. That's what real science is. It's authoritative. Everything is backed up. There's no speculation there. And then Srila Prabhupada, he's challenging the scientists who say that, yes, we've been to the moon. And Prabhupada actually points out that the moon, according to Bhagavatam, is much further away than the sun. So one devotee asks Prabhupada, did we actually go to the moon? And Srila Prabhupada, he said, no, they can't go there. The devotee, he asks, did they land on the moon? And Prabhupada said, they can't even go there. How can they land on the moon if they can't even go there? Because it's higher than the sun. It's further away than the sun. And apart from that, we have to have a suitable body to be able to go to the moon planet. Like if you want to go to the sun, you can't just go to the sun. You have to have a suitable body that is able to live on the sun planet. And the moon is the same. And then what's also funny is that in one purport in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Prabhupada says, how can we believe that the maintainer of vegetation has no vegetation on his own planet? Because Soma, he's the presiding deity of the moon planet, and he takes care of the vegetation throughout the universe. So how can we believe that he doesn't have vegetation on his own planet? How can that be possible? So we can see the scientists who claim to have gone there and brought back some really nice looking rocks. We can understand they didn't go there. It's not possible. But not everyone will believe Prabhupada when he said that. Like one of his disciples who came to him and was asking about that, Prabhupada was very firm in his presentation of how they didn't go to the moon, but this disciple, he couldn't accept that, and he actually left Srila Prabhupada's association because of this one small issue. He couldn't accept that America didn't go to the moon. He took shelter in modern science instead of Srila Prabhupada. We have to be careful not to do that. And yeah, so Srila Prabhupada is saying that you can believe in the newspaper, but I believe we can believe in Shastra too, rather. Why not? It's a different source of knowledge, but the source of knowledge is Krishna, or Krishna's disciples. It's coming from higher authorities. And then Srila Prabhupada says that you have to accept this process of austerity by which you purify your consciousness. We have to purify our existence. Then you will get deathless life, eternal. So, process of austerity. My Guru Maharaj explained that unnatural austerity just hardens the heart, but real austerity is a byproduct of bhakti. So if we're practicing devotional service, automatically we'll be practicing austerity. But what is the austerity? Anything that's helping us come closer to Krishna. So when you're going on Harinam Sankirtan, that's the austerity. But isn't it wonderful? In the beginning it may seem like an austerity, perhaps if we don't have any taste. Or like waking up early for Mangal Arti, that's an austerity. Getting up early, not easy, in cold places in the winter time. But still, we do that, and then what is difficult in the beginning, what is poison in the beginning, it becomes like nectar at the end, it becomes sweeter. That's real austerity. It's the byproduct of bhakti. And then there are other things as well, like fasting on Ekadashi and on disappearance and appearance days. These things are there. And it's always meant to bring us closer and closer. It's not meant to harden the heart, it's meant to soften the heart. That's the whole point of bhakti. And Srila Prabhupada points out that this is the business of human life, that we're not meant to be just engaging in sense gratification. And he says, like hogs and dogs, they're just asking, where's stool? And they're just so excited to eat that stool. And from their perspective, it's so nice. But we're doing the same thing in a different way. Oh, sense gratification is so nice. But how much of it can you get before you feel just sickened by it? How much is really sweet? Not even any of it. And then on the flip side of what is difficult in the beginning is like nectar at the end in spiritual life. In material life, what is like nectar in the end, in the beginning is like poison at the end. It's not really something satisfying. And then Hari Suri Prabhu, he says, Prabhupada couldn't have spoken Lord Chaitanya's message more lucidly, establishing it clearly that he himself is the undisputable spiritual authority for this age. Even just that one sentence, there's so much to say about how Srila Prabhupada is the undisputable spiritual authority for this age. And actually, Srila Prabhupada, he said that Jesus Christ is a Shakti-Vesh avatar of the Lord, that he's especially empowered to share love of Godhead with others. But Prabhupada was also a Shakti-Vesh avatar of the Lord. And confidentially, he was telling his disciples that he only came to the material world because Krishna asked him to. He didn't want to come, but Krishna said, please come. And then he said, okay, I will come. And, that's why we can't even really imagine who Srila Prabhupada is. In the morning, we're singing Ebe Jas Kushak Tribhuvana. His fame is spread all over the three worlds. We can't imagine who Srila Prabhupada actually was. And even Narada Muni, he foretold the glories of Srila Prabhupada, saying that here in the Padma Purana, he says that, "O Bhakti Devi, there is no age like Kali, because you will be established in every house and in every heart. Hear my vow." And then it was Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur who wrote that, "Soon there will be a time when the chanting of Krishna's name will be heard in England, France, Russia, Germany, and America." So they're both saying here in Kali Yuga, which it just seems impossible. We're so degraded, yet Krishna's name is being chanted all over the world. And why? It's because of Srila Prabhupada. It's because he came. He came to rescue us. And the demigods and the higher planets, they're praying to take birth here during Kali Yuga, because then they get to meet Srila Prabhupada and his disciples. So we can understand we are very, very fortunate, and the grandfather is more merciful than the father, so we shouldn't think that, oh, we didn't get to meet Srila Prabhupada personally. We did. He's right there. And we get to meet him, we get to associate with him, we get to read his books, not ordinary books. Srila Prabhupada would read his own books, and his disciples asked, "Prabhupada, but why are you reading your own books?" And he would explain, "I didn't write this. I could never write something so nice. It's from Krishna." These are Krishna's books. And then there's this one man in the audience there. He's persisting, asking again and again, "Do you think reincarnation is there?" And Prabhupada, his response is that it's not really about what I think. It's not about my opinion. I accept Shastra as it is. So again, it comes back to accepting authority as it is, not speculating, not just having our own opinion. Of course, we are independently thoughtful men and women, and we're encouraged to be that, and we can't help but think and speculate, but we should do that appropriately. We should clear our doubts. We should investigate and understand scripture from the perspective from which it is given. And then the people in the audience, they're saying it's very difficult to achieve self-realization, and Srila Prabhupada agrees. He says, yes, of course it's very difficult, undoubtedly. But that is why we should try to practice from the very beginning of our lives. and that is stated by Prahlad Maharaj. He was only 5 years old, and he was preaching. He was 5 years old and he was preaching. And we had Gora Leela here for some time. She's only 7 years old, and look at her. She's on her way, following in the footsteps of Prahlad Maharaj. So, but even if we've only discovered this wonderful process later in our lives, still, no matter where we are, even if we're 80 years old, wherever we are, just pick it up from where you are. And neha vikarma nashasti prajavyana vijate. There's no loss. There's no loss. Pick it up wherever you are, and wholeheartedly follow. And then Srila Prabhupada, he says that Bhagavat Dharma means to understand God and our relationship with God and act accordingly. And there's that verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Savaipam Samparo Dharmo, that the supreme occupation for humanity is that by which we can attain loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki jai, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Shri Giriraj Govardhan ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Yes, so Dharma really means to understand our relationship with God. And in the purport to the second verse of Bhagavatam, first canto, Prabhupada explains that it's cheating religion to think that we should approach God for something. If we're going to Krishna, please give me this and that. And my Guru Maharaj always says, give me a house and a color TV, a house by the sea, Jai Om Jai Jagadish Hare. So if we're coming to Krishna and asking him for something other than devotional service, then bhakti, then something along those lines, and we're just asking for something material, then we're cheating ourselves, actually. We're just cheating ourselves out of experiencing the reciprocation we can actually get from practicing bhakti yoga, from just coming to Krishna and wanting to serve and please him. Because it's love to want to serve and want to give, and the opposite of that is lust, wanting to take, wanting to get. So we want to try and shift the consciousness from the one polar extreme to the other. And of course it's not going to be easy, but at least we can try. And my Guru Maharaj explains that there are different kinds of prayers we can pray to the Lord. One way is that we can pray in the same words as our previous acharyas, and although we're not as exalted as they are in our consciousness, it's like if you light a candle, sometimes you get some wax on your finger. So something rubs off when you're chanting. There's a mood there that our acharyas pray with, and something rubs off within the consciousness. Or we can pray with our own words as well. But we should always be cautious. How are we praying? What are we praying for? So we don't want to just cheat ourselves out of actually practicing bhakti yoga. That's not... Dharma is... It's our constitutional position to be a servant of the Lord. It's what's really satisfying to the heart. And then Srila Prabhupada points out that actually the duty of the guardians and the government is to train people how to avoid death. So in other words, to practice Krishna consciousness, to transcend material birth and death. That's actually the duty of the government. But he's saying, where is that education? And he's saying that this is the defect of modern education. There's no training. And even he points that out. He says, in the universities, we can study so many different subjects, but where's the subject which explains that you're not this body, you're actually a spirit soul? And that's the most fundamental, basic knowledge in spiritual life that we're trying to understand, and it's not there in our education system. They have philosophy, they have religious studies, but I studied philosophy and I don't think they said that even once. They didn't say, oh, you're not this body. They didn't say that, not even once. So much philosophy, and they're not saying that. The ABCs are not there. Then the class comes to an end, and Srila Prabhupada, he goes for his massage, and then he has prasadam, and there's a lot of nice details. Just, if you should go back and you should read if you can. Oh, here. So Hari Suri, he was serving Srila Prabhupada prasadam, and every time, he was just pointing out that every time he'd go in, he'd pay obeisances, and then he'd drop the chapati on Srila Prabhupada's plate. So they would come with one, and then another one, and then another one. And Shuta Kirti Prabhu also speaks about this, how every time they came in, they would pay obeisances. So it's not just that they would come in and leave, they would pay obeisances. And Shuta Kirti Prabhu, at some point he realized he's running in and out so many times that maybe he can just quickly pay obeisances because he doesn't want to keep Srila Prabhupada waiting. But Srila Prabhupada commented that, no, what is this hatchet obeisances? No, it shouldn't be done like that. It should be proper obeisances each and every time. Yet with another disciple, he would come in and he would pay full dandavats every single time and offer prayers. And it took quite a long time for him to do that. So Srila Prabhupada said, what are you doing on the ground? We have so much to do, let's not waste time. So he knew how to deal with each and every disciple. But for us, we should always all pay obeisances. Yes, we should always pay obeisances to Srila Prabhupada properly and to our spiritual masters. And scripture says actually that every time we see Guru, we should pay obeisances. So, and I think there used to be this culture in ISKCON that devotees would pay obeisances to all of the other devotees all the time, whenever they saw them. It's more of a mood like that. I don't know, it's not so much there anymore. It's there, but I think it'd be nice if we got back to that. And then Srila Prabhupada, some devotees, they come to see him for darshan, and then Srila Prabhupada, Hari Suri Prabhu says that Srila Prabhupada was insistent that every visitor must receive some prasadam. So Prabhupada, he always wanted that whoever came to visit him would always leave with prasadam. And I see Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj has started doing that in the classes. He's giving prasadam at the end of every class. Yeah, because there's that verse, Kirtveva Triptim Bhajata Sadeva, that the devotee, the pure devotee is satisfied, Guru is satisfied when he sees a devotee is having prasadam. He feels satisfaction from that. And Srila Prabhupada would sometimes watch his disciples have prasadam, and he was satisfied by that. And then Hari Suri Prabhu, he says that from the past few days' experience, I am beginning to understand that humility is everything, the essential basis on which all other service is built. Being humble is the only means to counteract offenses and is the key to a good service attitude. Srila Prabhupada is tolerant of ignorance, and if one is eager to serve. And we're chanting in the mornings also Shri Shikshastakam Trinata Pisa Nichina Tarora Pisa Hishnina Manina Manadina Kirtaniya Hasada Hari. We can't chant the holy names of the Lord unless we're actually humble. We can't do it. And then if we're not chanting properly, we won't have that service mood. But if we're chanting with at least some humility, then we'll start building up a service mood and this enthusiasm to serve. And and he says, Srila Prabhupada is tolerant of ignorance as one is eager to serve. So we are ignorant, we're steeped in ignorance. But if we just have some enthusiasm to serve, then okay, he tolerates the ignorance and gives us that mercy we need to make advancement. And then Hari Soi Prabhu says that this whole experience is tremendous. It is extremely blissful to be so close to the vital essence of what Krishna consciousness is all about, association with and service to the pure devotee of the Lord. So that, Sadhu Sangha, 90% of our Krishna consciousness comes from Sadhu Sangha, 90%, that's a lot. That's the building block from which all of the other stages of devotional service come. And there's that verse, Nashta Prayasha Bhadreshu Nityang Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Yuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki, that by rendering service to the pure devotee and by reading Bhagavatam, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is established within one's heart as an irrevocable fact. And because Prabhupada's book Bhagavatam, there's book Bhagavatam and there's person Bhagavatam, he's person Bhagavatam, so by associating with him and rendering service to him, it's described everything that all the anarthas, they start being swept away from the heart. And then here we are, we're on the 29th of November now, still 1975. So Srila Prabhupada, he goes on his morning walk, and it's amazing that when Srila Prabhupada was ill, there was a doctor who came to see him, and he explained that actually Srila Prabhupada, he needs to go for walks. He needs to start walking, doing some exercise every day. And Srila Prabhupada took that to heart, and every day without fail he would go for his morning walk. Even if he was traveling and the time zone was different, there was no impediment in him following that instruction that he received to actually go for his morning walk. He was so regulated in everything he did. He would do the same thing every day without fail. Amazing, just amazing. And then his disciples, they are discussing with Srila Prabhupada how, some scientists, they believe that that the body and the way that we're able to move is all just a result of chemical reactions. So they're seeing the chemicals as being the controller. They're denying the existence of God. And but Srila Prabhupada points out that we can't actually create or destroy anything. We are actually just instrumental. We can't create anything. And then one devotee, he says that, but Prabhupada, in Russia they managed to graft an extra head onto a dog. And then Prabhupada explains that, but Ravana, he had so many heads, and surely he would have been so much more intelligent, but actually still Lord Ram proved him wrong, that he was more intelligent. And they just have this dialogue, and it's kind of funny because Srila Prabhupada's disciples are playing along, kind of speaking as though they were the scientists. There's like a little drama that takes place between Prabhupada and his disciples. I think it's all actually for our benefit, this dialogue that's taking place, so that we can read and understand both perspectives and how to defeat this kind of argument. And Harikesh, he asks Prabhupada, why should somebody rich and I be poor? And he's asking, why is there so much unfairness? And Srila Prabhupada says, no, it's not unfair, it's nature's arrangement. like we're all living entities. Why is it that we're in human bodies and why is someone else in an ant's body? It's all nature's arrangement. It's all perfectly designed and arranged by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it's beyond our understanding. Karma is way beyond our understanding. We can't even understand karma. But everything we've been given, everything we have, it's all a blessing by the Lord, whatever it may be. And he says that an intelligent student, he doesn't think, oh, by chance I might pass my exam. He goes and he studies. He doesn't just think, oh, well, I'm just going to go and maybe by chance I will pass. So it's not by chance that we get this body. It's not by chance that anything around us is happening. It's not chance. There is some cause, Prabhupada says. And of course we know that cause is Krishna, Lord Chaitanya. And he also just points out that this kind of unfairness that we see in the world, it's also just a product of Kali Yuga, as predicted by Srila Vyasadeva. This would happen in Kali Yuga. The leaders of society, they're not taking care of the people, and therefore the whole political system isn't really working out so well. And he points out when they're walking down the road, he's pointing out that there are some people who are so hungry in the world and yet they're building museums of natural history to show heaps of dead stones and bones. So he's saying, what's the point? What's the point of that when so much is needed in the world? It's just the utilization of resources is not being directed in the proper areas. Not that there isn't enough in the world. And he says that there are so many buildings, but there's not a single building where spiritual culture is discussed, although it is the real basis of life. He was just looking around him and seeing that. But of course now we have so many buildings, there are temples all over the world where this is being discussed. And this is going to be difficult to hear, but Prabhupada says at the end of the conversation, he ends this conversation with a very ominous note, and he says, civilization will collapse very soon all over the world. It will collapse. Either you may bring this ism or that ism, this civilization will collapse. People will become mad, being harassed in so many ways. When one is harassed in so many problems, he commits suicide, so that position is coming. And then Harikesh, he says, he starts a war, and Prabhupada says, yes, when the government cannot adjust, they start a war. So Srila Prabhupada, he predicted that there would be a collapse in civilization, and he predicts that the economy will collapse, and he also predicted that people would start taking shelter at our eco-village project. And there's so much about that. There's so much about that if you just do some research. Srila Prabhupada, what he says about having these ideal places within society where people can take shelter. He says things like, sorry, I'm just trying to find it, because there's quite a lot that he says on this point. But, towards the end of Srila Prabhupada's life, the devotees asked him, do you have any regrets, Srila Prabhupada? And he said, no. But then he thought for some time and he said, I do have one regret. I didn't establish the Varna ashram system. That's what he said. And so many times he's pointing out that, here he says, he said that unless in the human society the Varna ashram system is introduced, no scheme or social order, health order, or any order, political order, will be successful. And Srila Prabhupada, he said that, civilization will collapse very soon all over the world. Our farm projects are an extremely important part of our movement. We must become self-sufficient by growing our own grains and producing our own milk. Then there will be no question of poverty. So develop these farm communities as far as possible. If these farms become successful, then the whole world will be enveloped by Krishna consciousness. Krishna is the farm acharya, Baladev is holding a plow, and Krishna is holding the calf. The Krishna consciousness movement will go down in history as having saved mankind in its darkest hour. This is so important. We need to start moving with these projects. They're coming, but we need to move a lot faster. And just on the point of war, it's pretty interesting. One of Prabhupada's disciples was asking about this because he had some engagement in being a soldier. And Srila Prabhupada said that the kinds of wars going on right now between materialistic people, it doesn't accomplish anything. But actually there is a place for war in spiritual life. Like, look, Arjuna was fighting on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And if it ever became necessary, of course, war is there, but spiritual wars accomplish something. It's not just one person fighting another for some material benefit. It's to accomplish Krishna consciousness, actually. Not that we want to fight in wars, like Arjuna didn't want to, but Krishna desired that the proper rulers be re-established in the world at that time. Oh, and then Ambarish Prabhu, he came to visit Srila Prabhupada, and they were talking about developing a place of pilgrimage, the Kurukshetra, Kurukshetra area. They wanted to create a space there for the devotees to come and study and serve. So they had this project going on there. And what's interesting is that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that Vrindavan is a place for shallow thinkers, and Kurukshetra is a real place for bhajan. So we might wonder why, because we always hear about how exalted Vrindavan Leela is, but actually we can't just be sentimental, we can't just jump ahead on the one hand, and on the other hand, it's that Kurukshetra, in the Kurukshetra, Srimati Radharani, when she sees Krishna after so long, she feels like he's so close, but so far away, because she loves Krishna in Vrindavan, the cowherd boy, but here in Kurukshetra, he has his entourage. He's dressed like a king, and he's got so many elephants, horses, soldiers, and Srimati Radharani, she's getting darshan of Krishna after so long, but it's not her Krishna. This isn't her Krishna. So it's her eagerness to see Krishna then is even more intense. It's most intense there on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So my Guru Maharaj explains here in his book that service in that kind of eagerness to serve and please Krishna, that with service in that mood is actually the highest. That's the highest. So Kurukshetra, it's a very, very, very special place for a devotee to go on pilgrimage to. And so they were developing the space there. And Srila Prabhupada, he had finished his prasadam, and there was a small donation of fruit that was meant to be offered to the deities. And the devotee, he picks up Srila Prabhupada's plate in the one hand, and he was going to pick up the bowl of fruit in the other hand, but Prabhupada stopped him. He said, no, you should first wash yourself, don't be contaminated, because, I've contaminated the plate, and this is for the deities, the fruit is for the deities. And the devotees were seeing from the perspective that, this prasadam is pure, it's pure, so of course, I'm not contaminated by touching Prabhupada's plate. And it's true. There was this air hostess on an airline where Srila Prabhupada was traveling, and Prabhupada, he had some rice. It was, what is it, that rice called when it's dry? What is it? Yes, puffed rice. So he had puffed rice. And then he gave his remnants to Shrutakirti Prabhu, and then Shrutakirti Prabhu was busy honoring this Mahaprasadam. And then this air hostess walks past, and then this isn't an ordinary thing for an air hostess to do. They don't usually do this, but she actually just grabbed some of the puffed rice that Shrutakirti was eating, and she ate it. And she said, wow, this is amazing. But usually an air hostess won't do something like that. So Shrutakirti thought, wow, this is the super soul that's guiding her to just take this Mahaprasad. All the devotees, they're always fighting for the Mahaprasadam of this pure devotee. And she's getting it. And then she said, oh, can I get you some fruit? And she went and she was serving Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada was saying that she had this natural inclination to serve. And Shrutakirti Prabhu, he was giving a class in South America, and then afterwards one of his godbrothers came to him, and he said, I wanted to just share something amazing with you, that I've been preaching here for some time, and sometimes we would go out into the Brazilian forests, and it's a very remote, very isolated area, and they would go deep into the forests in Brazil, and they'd go house to house because, it's so remote that there aren't a lot of people. And they knocked on the door of one lady's house, and she opened and she said, Hare Krishna, come on in. And she was a devotee, and Srila Prabhupada, his picture was there. This was a devotee's house. And she explained that, I used to be an air hostess on one of the airlines, and I didn't know who Prabhupada was, but I got some of his Mahaprasadam, and after that connection, I started associating with the devotees, and now here I am, and it's 20 years later. That was the same air hostess from that time. Just amazing. Prabhupada's Mahaprasadam. And so we are seeing from that perspective, but then Hariswar just brings up an important point, that from my point of view, as a disciple, both Guru and God were to be worshipped on the same level. Foremost in my mind was the thought that every little opportunity to render some service was for my own benefit. Srila Prabhupada and Krishna, they don't need our service really. They don't really need anything. They're Atmaram, they're self-satisfied. But because they're compassionate towards us and every living entity, it's good for us to serve. And because they want that everyone gets the mercy of Krishna, they're coming out and helping us to serve. Srila Prabhupada didn't arrange his own servants. Like Shrutakirti Prabhu, he was assigned as Srila Prabhupada's servant. Prabhupada wouldn't have even asked for a servant, a personal servant. He just carried on with his service of trying to preach Krishna consciousness. And we're singing in the morning, Shakshat Harit Bena Samasta Shastra, that the pure devotee, he's as dear as the Lord. We should worship him. We should worship him like that, because he's the most confidential servant of the Lord. And then Harishori, he says that you know, he says, being with Srila Prabhupada is opening up a whole new perspective on devotional service to me. As Srila Prabhupada's assistant, one has to learn to see matters from his point of view, and that takes precedence over one's own. So even though he was seeing from the one perspective that this is Mahaprasadam, we should also try to see from the point of view of our spiritual masters and follow their order. We have our own ways of seeing things, and sometimes we think we know better, but actually, getting back to what we were saying in the beginning, accepting authority means to give up our false ego and accept that what we're hearing, Guru, he's speaking from the perspective of Krishna consciousness. He's speaking, in this case, Srila Prabhupada is speaking from just out of humility, but we should understand that Guru, he's seeing from the perspective of Shastra, through the lens of Shastra. So whatever he says to us, we shouldn't just take it lightly. Guru can see higher than us, and he can see from higher than us. So we should understand that what Guru desires for us to do, it's not because he wants it, it's because Krishna wants it, and therefore he wants it. He's just purely serving the Lord. And then it comes down to surrender. How is it that we're surrendering? How is it that we are able to accept that higher authority and understand what Krishna wants us to do? It's only through Guru that we can understand what Krishna wants us to do. But that surrender will depend on Shraddha, faith. And everything, it all starts with Shraddha. The road to Prema Bhakti starts there with faith. And faith in the Bhagavad Gita, it's described as being unflinching trust in something sublime. And everything we've been given, isn't it just completely sublime? It's completely sublime. Okay, we're going to stop there because we ran out of time. Does anyone have any questions or comments or corrections?
Thank you for that beautiful explanation of the different points. I was just thinking that, as you were saying, or as Prabhupada was saying, that the universities don't have the fundamental philosophy, which is we are not those bodies, right? So Prabhupada said that this is the ABC of spiritual life, and in a mathematical solution, if the first equation is wrong, then the whole formula, the whole thing is wrong. The whole sum is wrong. So similarly, with philosophy also, with spiritual life also, if we don't understand that we are not this body, then we won't be able to grasp higher knowledge. So yeah, thank you for that, Hare Krishna.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And theoretically we understand that, but actually realizing that is really high. It's actually very high. You probably all realize that, but I don't think I have. I'm still. Anyone else? Okay. Transcendental Diaries ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.